right, car guys, what Milwaukee tools do you need? Well, if you're in the Milwaukee line or you're thinking about getting into it and you're a car guy, I'm going to go over what I think you need, and this is based on my experience ripping multiple cars apart, putting some of those back together. The reason I decided to get into the Milwaukee line of things was I watched a lot of toolbox tours online, a lot of professional ones, and a lot of those guys you'd see in their box, they're using this Stubby, they're using the big Milwaukee, they're using the ratcheting wrenches. And, well, honestly, if they're using them for race teams and for professional builds, then I'm pretty sure they're good enough for me and you and for DIY stuff. Milwaukee's always improving, too, so they always come out with a newer version or a better version a few years down the line, kind of like how this one turned into this one for me. This is one of my first ever Milwaukee tools, and I got it because, well, I like a ratcheting power wrench. It's super easy to be running out spark plugs, not running them in, run them out with this. And this one's pretty fast. It does a really good job, but its downfall is it's kind of short, okay? Let's measure this thing out. So you've got to be, like, really close to what you're working on. Okay, that measures with the battery about 11 inches. And I will say that I really like this style battery, not the block style. This style when it comes to the ratchets. Because if you put the block style on there, I'll show you, it makes another spot where you might hang up on something. It's just bigger, and then the weight is a little bit different. It's weighted much further in the back than it is in the front. It's much more balanced when you have one of these round style on there. This is a lot easier to hold in the hand and balance. I'll also point out that this one kind of has a little bit of a short work area before it gets a lot fatter, which is why I decided to upgrade to this one. You can see the easy access kind of work area ends here on this original ratchet, whereas here I've got this much space before it gets bigger. So I can get further into an area, and I can also get closer to certain objects to clear them to get to that fastener that I'm working with. Another advantage of this one that I ran into was because it's such a long reach, when I was working on the car, I didn't have to walk around the hood to the other side of the car to work on some of the spark plugs. I could reach them all from where I was, which you can't do with this or most hand ratchets, but I could do it with this extended reach. That was really nice to have around. I will say these right here, you can use them kind of like a ratchet to break things free. You just don't hold the trigger and then you pull on it. They don't recommend that because if you pull too far down here, you can end up breaking the tabs on the battery. You don't want to put a whole lot of force down at the end. So if you are going to do that, what I recommend is just grab this grip, okay? Because you can't grab the trigger. Grab at the grip and then use it to break something free and then pull the trigger, run that thing out. And this thing's so much faster than this one. Let's measure that one out real quick, too. 15 inches with the battery. And again, I like to use this style battery with the ratchets. I do not like to use the block style. They just weight it funny, and then that little block that hangs off of there can also get in the way of whatever you're working on. So sometimes you just kind of have to have this style on there. And it's no problem. I'm not running these things all day long. If you are, then just make sure you've got some higher power ones and a couple maybe on the charger. So ultimately, that's why I stepped up to this one. If you're after a power ratchet, battery operated ratchet, I would go with the high speed extended version. You're going to find yourself using that more often than this. And I know that because, well, I had this one, loved it, got this one in the box, and I haven't touched this one since. And it's been about, 6 to 8 months. Tore a whole car apart, only used this one. And I'll put links down into the description so you don't have to go hunting the internet for these products. I'll just put easy links so you can click right on those. Now, moving down the line, my first ever impact from Milwaukee was this Stubby. And this Stubby does just about everything you would want it to on a car. I can take lug nuts off with it. I can rip suspension, exhaust, brake work with it. Very rarely do I find something this can't do. And when that happens, that either means I've got to get a huge breaker bar out or have yourself a bigger M18 high torque. This is the high torque, one of the biggest, heaviest duty ones they have in this generic shape. They make much larger ones. But this is I think rated for over 1,500 foot-pounds on it. And it will seriously rip anything apart. Cool thing about the upgrade on the new style is they have this triple light, whereas this only has one single light, and sometimes that's not really illuminating where you're working. This has 3 lights, which is much easier to illuminate where you're working. I'll show you kind of, this light is... The Stubby's light, very unimpressive. Sometimes it's a little helpful, but usually I've got a different light down there with me. This one, much brighter. and honestly, so much more powerful. But like I said, this one can run lug nuts. If you're doing lug nuts all day long, if you're a tire guy or something, well, you're going to want to step up to something with a much more high capacity and high power. Bonus product here. This gets used every single day. I don't necessarily consider it a power tool, but for a car guy, this thing is super helpful. It's got magnets there so you can stick it onto things. I like working this one with the base because I can stand it up, and then I can point it in any direction, side to side like that, or you can lay it down and do the same thing. I'll try not to blind you. There we go. So this one's a very versatile light, and I honestly use it every single day when I'm in the garage because, well, you always need light, right? Especially if you're crawling into an engine bay or underneath a car. I'll take this thing underneath the car with me and just lay it on the ground like that and point it wherever I'm working. It's been a very, very helpful light. So, which ones would I say you gotta have if I'm only buying one of these tools across the board right here, getting into the M12 line to help me tear apart cars? It's going to be the Stubby. It's going to be the Stubby because it's by far, I think, the most versatile tool out of the group. Like, you're never taking lug nuts off with this, but this can take off anything that this can take off, that's for sure, except you just got to be able to reach it. And this fits in so many spots. I mean, you can see how the size difference compared to the, I mean, it eclipses it. You can't even see the Stubby behind it. This is so much lighter, too, so if you're working a lot, this can kind of get a bit cumbersome when you're trying to hold it up all day long. I would go with the M12 Stubby as long as it can go within the specs of the torque that you are normally working with. And if you're working on passenger vehicles like sports cars or small trucks, things like that, this is going to do a ton of work for you. If you're working on big diesels or massive equipment all the time, you're going to want to step up to something that's got the half-inch drive, M18, and a whole lot of nut-busting torque because you're going to want that extra oomph. Second one, if you were to only have two of these tools to start off ripping cars apart and putting them back together, I would say get yourself the extended high-speed ratchet. I don't necessarily care that it's high speed. It doesn't save me a ton of more time on this one's speed, although it is faster than that one. But what I get is the reach and the length that you're going to want going in and out of weird spots, and the head just has much more space to work. The neck, honestly, I should say, the neck is so much slimmer for so much longer on that one. So if you can only have one tool, I'd say get the Stubby. If you can have two tools, get the extended reach and the Stubby. If you can have three tools, you're not going to need this one much if you have that one. So if you can have three tools, I'd definitely consider the Rover light for your third tool. Seriously, one of my favorite tools in the garage. Like I said, I use it every single day. I had to break this one out on the car I was taking apart to get the subframe apart. So this one just didn't have the power to do it. This one had no trouble at all. Literally like a flick of the trigger did it. Big. And again, why did I get into the Milwaukee line? Well, I'm a homeowner and a car guy, and Milwaukee makes a ton of stuff that crosses over between the two, and then they make some really specialized stuff for vehicles. Like, I'm never going to use this thing in the house. I'm never going to use this thing in the house. It'd be rare that I'd use this in the house, but I do use this in the house quite a bit, and I do have other Milwaukee tools that are more home-related, kind of like the little sawzalls, the cutting things, stuff like that. I don't tend to use that on cars very often, but if you're a car guy, here's my recommendations. Get that one out of the way. And again, if you watch a whole bunch of like race team and mechanic style toolbox tours, a lot of them will have drawers full of these impacts and these ratchets. So I highly trust these things, and their warranty's really darn good. None of these tools here have under-impressed me. In fact, they've all over-delivered. The Stubby seriously takes a beating in my garage. This thing gets used every single day under the hood. This thing, while it kind of is the sleeping beauty until this guy's like, I don't want to do it. Then Big Mama comes out and just rips it apart and then goes back to bed. Hey, like what you see? Be a really good idea if you subscribe so you can see some more.